The next thing that I want to work on here is tomatoes. Now, tomatoes, we do two things with tomatoes. So I will actually pull 2 tomatoes out so I can show you. Our tomato project first is going to involve our paring knife because we need to take the core end out of the tomato. To do that, I am going to hold the knife, I'm going to choke up on it. I'm going to put my thumb here as a guide so I don't go too deep into the tomato. Slice into that tomato at an angle so that I'm making a little cone that I'm pulling out the core from. So that's just a compost material right there. Now if I'm doing a sliced tomato, I'm going to begin by setting the tomato up, and I want to always cut it, in this case, if I'm making slices that I want to keep in rounds, I need to cut it equatorially instead of longitudinally. So not from pole to pole like this, but I want to cut it in this manner instead so that I have the entire tomato, I can see the entire surface of the tomato when my cut's finished. I want them to be fairly thin, but not as thin as I can get them, because once I stack them up, they're going to start to fall apart and disintegrate inside of my final product container. So I'm going to hold the tomato on its side. I want to put the heel of my hand down here and hold on to this tomato. I don't want to let it go at this point. I'm going to hold on to it here. Once I cut into this tomato, I let go and I grab again. I'm going to be bending it. So I'm just going to hold it right here, and I'm not going to use a guide hand. I'm just going to make really easy slices. Long slices. Until I reach the point where I'm holding that tomato. And then I'm going to put this aside for dicing. What I have here is 1/4 inch slices to 1/8 of an inch slices for sandwiches and burgers and such in the Breyer grill. To dice, and I'm going to show you a dice here, but I can dice the rest of this tomato, or I can dice a full tomato on its own. So let's start with the full tomato on its own. Same thing. Using the coring technique I showed you earlier, take out the core. I always want to start with 1/2 of a tomato because now I have a flat surface. And just as we do all other manners of vegetables, I'm going to first make slices, 1/4 inch slices. Okay, and then I'm going to lay down some of these slices. So I line it up here. I like to use the biggest surface on the bottom, line it up here, same distance of cuts, holding it together as I go so it doesn't fall apart, turning it here, and now making my dices, holding it together as gently as I can. Okay, and now I have my 1/4 inch dices. The one thing that is always true about a tomato is because it's a round surface, I'm going to face a part where this guy is much smaller than all the rest of my slices. It's part of the natural variation of a tomato, but I have another trick that I often use. Instead of making all of my slices exactly 1/4 of an inch, when I get down to the end, I'm going to make a choice. Now, this one here, I could probably get 3 cuts or 3 pieces, 2 cuts with one tiny guy left. Or I could make a judgment and just put one more cut into that, making each of these slightly bigger. That's the choice I'd prefer to make unless I'm going for perfect. So now, when I come into my dicing again, I cut through here, and again I have the same question I'm going to make here. Well, I'm going to leave a tiny sliver there. I'm not going to cut that guy again. Okay, there's our dices.